I left the world to travel with no plan. All I knew that I was going to start with my yoga teacher training course, which I did, and after that I had no idea where I was going next. I embarked on a solo adventure. It's coming into my 6 months now, and I just wanted to share some truths on what it really is like to do the whole solo backpacking trip thing. It's not just me as well. I've spoken to a few people who have done the same thing and come across the same sort of challenges. Obviously, when you're on the gram and Facebook, you see, I did 152 countries, like all alone, or like, I left my hometown and did the whole no plan thing, and like, it sounds and looks amazing. And it really has been. Like, I am not discounting my experience on this trip so far, but it needs to be shared, some of the toughest stuff that comes up when you're traveling alone. So, number one, you get pretty tired eventually of meeting new people. And trust me, I am so grateful for all the people that I've met. Like, I've made some incredible friends. At the start, you'll be like, oh my God, I met this person and that person was amazing, and I learnt this from them and that from the other. But after a few months, when you've said goodbye to all the friends that you've made traveling, and you're on your own again, and you need to meet new people, and the way you get to know them is starting from scratch, and you need to explain your story, where you're from, why you're there, where you're going, what you do. It's quite exhausting. And you really crave being able to speak to someone who already knows you and who you can just be really comfortable with and not have to build rapport from the beginning. Numero dos. You start to put a lot of pressure on yourself to have fun. Now, this is just, again, completely my own experience, but I've heard this from other people too. I know initially you might think, what do you mean you're just lying on a beach? Or what do you mean you're just having fun? It can be tiring because you're constantly changing, and change is like a very minor amount, it triggers a minor amount of stress. And if you're constantly changing and you also don't know where you're going the next day, and you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going, it's a bit stressful. And you're meeting new people, la 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 la, you're in an unfamiliar environment, you need to learn the new currency, da 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 da. It can be a bit stressful. So eventually I got a bit exhausted, and that's completely natural. You can't be on all the time, especially when you're traveling for 6 months. So I noticed that when I got exhausted, I had a bit of guilt in the back of my mind for not making the most of where I was. I was, oh my God, I'm on Cat Bar Island, like I should be enjoying this place, even though I didn't really like Cat Bar Island very much. I'll make another video on that later. You start to feel guilty for not having fun. You put pressure on yourself. You go, okay, I'm going to embark on this adventure, and it's got to be amazing in this and this and this and that way. But as soon as it's not that, because you do need to recharge, you need to relax and say no to a few things, then you might start to be upset with that. It gets really tough to tune into your body and just do what's right for you, as opposed to do what you should do. Number 3. So this one is quite interesting because you're spending a lot of time on your own. Obviously, that creates a lot of space for introspection. And if you're not the type of person who's spent a lot of time by themselves prior, or like anyone else really, a lot of time on your own with a lot of introspection can bring up a lot of hidden emotions or some unresolved conflict, and yeah, it's gonna be uncomfortable, but it's probably necessary for your healing. That's what I experienced anyway. I've got to say that I a lot of insecurities came out for me. It's like a light was shown on things that I hadn't dealt with from like my childhood. For example, like it's when you're traveling alone, it's harder to get. So when you're traveling and you're out of your daily routine, you need to find validation in different ways. And no matter what ways you try and find that validation, whether it's through other people or social media, when you're traveling alone, I was kind of forced to validate myself and find that self-validation. And so that was tough. That was a challenge, but I've improved myself tenfold since the start of my trip. So these insecurities coming up will be uncomfortable, but what you do with it is probably going to make or break your holiday. Number 4. If you love spending time with yourself already, then going on a solo trip makes you love time with yourself even more, because you go through it's kind of like dating yourself, you know. And if you're dating someone and you go on a trip with them and you come back and you're like, oh my god, I love them even more, I saw this side to them, and la la la. It's kind of like the same thing with traveling with yourself. Obviously, like I said before, there are some challenges that come up, and how you decide to approach them is going to make or break your experience. If you decide to embrace those challenges and those things that you like less about yourself, then it can be really transformative. Whereas if you dismiss it and you just don't want to be alone ever again, then I guess, yeah, then you'll have a different trip. Number 5. I'm pretty sure this is a very common thing, but you meet so many incredible quality people, especially when you're traveling alone, I feel, because you're so open and you open up your, I guess back at home you hang out with a certain type of person, but then when you're out of your comfort zone and overseas and traveling alone, you become more open to all the people, you know. And it's really interesting meeting people of different cultures who have different values, and it's funny meeting them because then you find similarities. I found sides of myself in people that had completely different values to me, and it really helped me expand as a person. It was really important for me to have a routine even when I was traveling alone. I think because there's so much change going on, I needed something that was stable and secure in my life to kind of keep me centered, keep me grounded, keep me from losing my mind. It sounds, I don't know if it sounds like a very crazy experience. I guess it is crazy. You're going overseas by yourself in a place where you've never been. Like, yeah, on paper it's crazy. So it really helped for me to have a routine. So I had a morning routine that was like a bit of yoga or a bit of exercise, and then, you know, a bit of reading, journaling, meditation. And I did that wherever I went. Like, I don't care if I was at a hostel. I'm like, oh, I'm in a dorm room, I can't do it. It's like, there's a way. Maybe the hostel has like a little porch out the back. Maybe you find a slab of concrete that there's no one around, or like, even, you know, doing my little journaling meditation thing, I just do it on my bunk bed. Like, who cares? Everyone's doing them. Like, you do you. Yeah, so I found that really helped me to stay grounded. I think also another important thing before going on my trip was to set out my priorities, because after a while, when I had no idea what direction I was going, I kind of felt like I had no purpose, and so that put me in a bit of a depression, which was challenging. On paper, it sounds amazing. You're doing this, you know, no trip plan. Like, you were super ballsy, super spontaneous, like so blasé. It was really nice being able to follow people, or, you know, you make friends and you go to other places, you change your plans, whatever. But also at the same time, afterwards, after a while of having no plan or no idea where I was going, I felt like I had nothing to work for. So I think it's really important before the trip to set out priorities. Like, why am I going on this trip? For me, it was like healing, expanding like perspectives and experience, so doing new things, and learning to trust more. That was my intention behind my trip. So whatever decision that I made throughout my trip, I based on that. For me, after a while, it was important that I had something to work for so that I could feel that sense of purpose again. But what really helped with this solo trip is that it helped me realize what I liked, what I didn't like, and learn a lot about myself in order to be able to make the best choices or make the best plan for my next steps in my life in general. So I didn't have accommodation like booked back to back. If I knew that I wanted to stay at a specific hostel because of recommendation, I would book it, but just for one night, and then I would just go downstairs the next morning and ask to extend. So it was quite laid back. I think that kept my trip open to like new opportunities, and it kept it more open to movement. Another tip as well, for me this worked really well. So if there was one place, like a destination, and I booked a night at a hostel at that place and I didn't vibe it, then I would change hostels the next day. So I mean, if you're someone who doesn't like change very much and you just like staying and sticking things out, fine, do that. But for me, I really found the benefit in trying a few different hostels in one place because I got a really varied experience. I got to see more of the place that I was at. I got to experience a different perspective to the place. I think where you stay it just changes the trip. It makes a big difference to my experience. I guess also it's important to keep in mind that you're not tied to anything. Like, I, for instance, taught yoga at a hostel for 1 week. Like, that's like the shortest job I've had ever. But there was a part of me that was saying you should probably stay for longer. Like, you know, that's probably the right thing to do. But I just kind of snapped out of it and was like, actually, no, fuck it. I'm on my own trip. I'm not tied down to anyone. I can do whatever I like. So I kindly packed up my bags, and somehow it was very last minute spontaneous decision. I told my boss like literally when I was going. I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to Koh Samui now. And he was like, okay, cool, when? And I said, oh, like now. Okay, bye, so nice knowing you, like thank you for everything, genuine, like no bitterness or anything. And they were super understanding. People get and respect that you need to do you. So even while traveling, like if you feel the obligation to go somewhere with someone or to stay, you know, somewhere and do something with someone, whatever, you don't owe anyone anything. This is your trip, so that's a very good thing to remember. Anyway, this was a very short, basic video. Some things I just wanted to get out there, that not everything is as it seems. I mean, the solo trip is amazing, but there are things that people need to be aware of, because it can be very easy to get depressed as well as have the time of your life. So, yeah. Anyway, if you have any questions, please hit me up, and I'll be making a video on some tools that I use throughout my solo trip to keep my sanity to some extent.